It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. The super producer, Dancing Anthony Haney, can be seen there. Yep, that's him. That's him. Big old megawatt smile and all. And we're happy to be with you on a Vibe Check Tuesday. A Vibe Check Tuesday that will include one heck of a guest list. Of course, it's a Tischler Tuesday as well. 5 o'clock, we got the big fella. Then 6 o'clock, Anthony, we have another big fella. The second one has Super Bowl rings, though. All due respect to Mitchell.
Who's to say Mitch doesn't have a Super Bowl ring that you don't know of?
I'm pretty sure Mitch doesn't have a Super Bowl ring.
Okay.
Nevertheless, 3 of them. Mark Schlereth is going to join us coming up at 6 o'clock. It's not where I expected that one to go. Schlereth at 6. Definitely always great to catch up with him after he calls a Commanders game because he gets so much stuff in the production meetings and then he just wants to talk about it. And then, yeah. So we got Stink coming up at 6 o'clock. Also, 5:30 today, your Jayden Daniels Take Command Tape Tuesday breakdown. Looking forward to sharing that with you after Logan and I recorded it this morning. Full Take Command podcast out now if you are impatient, but we'd like for you to listen to this show because you're already here, and let's stick with it. But on this Vibe Check Tuesday, Anthony, we are, of course, taking the pulse of all the listeners at 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. That is where you call in and you tell us how you're feeling about this team that is 3-1 through the first 4 games of the season. And I will say, for me, Anthony, Vibe Check on Planet Hoffman, the vibes are definitely better over here. And I think I mentioned this on the show yesterday. We're sitting on the couch Sunday watching the game. And Rachel just looks at me, my wife, Rachel, looks at me and just goes, this is so much fun. And not only is it so much fun because she is, who is not a football fan, but she is, for the first time in her life, watching football and enjoying it because Jayden Daniels is that much fun to watch. She's like, this is actually great. I'm pretty sure that when I go to the game at Northwest Stadium on Sunday, Rachel will watch it, not just so she has a clue what I'm talking about all the time, not just because, it's like, it's Sunday, what else is on? I guess I'll throw it on in the background and then mostly stare at my phone. I feel like she's going to legitimately watch the game without me, as I will be at the stadium. And that is a thing that my wife has never done in her entire life. But also, in the Hoffman household, the vibes are just better because going to work doesn't suck every day. Going to work and talking about a team that is bad and doesn't feel like it has a whole lot of paths to get better is how I've spent much of, we've been together 4 years. It's how I've spent most of the 4 years, in terms of the work side of my life. Now, not only is the team good, they have a chance to be great. This is the start. This is, in theory, the worst that they'll be. And so, yeah, the vibes for professionals covering this team, they are good. But we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I feel best not for people like me because at least I get paid to do this. Some of you have been riding this roller coaster for free. Nevertheless, at great cost for years and years and years to continue to support the team as they have been absolutely dreadful, at times hopeless, and mostly incompetent. And not just incompetent in a way that is not even funny. There's no Keystone Cops to this. Occasionally, Bruce Allen would do something that was genuinely hilarious, and you're like, you are so bad at your job, it's funny. But for the most part, it's been the kind of stuff where they've been so bad that you can't even laugh at it. You're just like, man, this is pathetic. This is unprofessional. Why do I care about this? What did I do in a past life that has made this my current one? And now, if you've stuck with it or if you've come back, either one, perfectly fine with me, it's paying off in a way that you're getting hype is on some of the morning shows as a top 5 team in the league.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting top 5 credit from people like Stephen A., who, I don't know.
Don't you dare say anything bad about my football acumen.
I still don't even... I still don't even know.
That's what I get for doing that impression. That
hurt?
Yeah, I didn't feel good at all.
I hate that for you.
I don't have... Yikes. Okay, that was... lesson learned. You were going to say something better than whatever I just did.
Yeah, I don't know if Stephen A's praise of the Commanders is all that in part, I guess, due to his hatred for right now, would you say we're a better team than the Cowboys?
Yes.
Okay.
Through 4 games, yes. Am I going to pick Washington over Dallas to win the division? That feels a little aggressive. Like Dallas, like it's close, but through 3 games, who's played, or through 4 games, who's been better, Washington or Dallas? I have no hesitation in saying Washington.
Yeah, definitely us.
And at first when you sent me that, because I was not watching, and I have not been online very much to do this stuff or to consume the takes, curate my online experience to try to avoid this stuff. But my first reaction wasn't like, oh wow, what a hot take. It was like, well, who's name 4 that have been better? And you hit me with a couple of teams. I was like, you know what? I think you're right. I think there's probably about 6 or 7 teams that I would say like been better with the way Washington's defense played the first 3 games. You're like, okay, is there a team that played better in the league last week? Probably not. But you could say that about the Bills 2 weeks ago, and then they got smashed by Baltimore on Sunday Night Football. And now it's like, well, are the Bills good? Or are they the best team? Are they like? These things change. If you want to make an argument that the Commanders have a better first 4 games than the Ravens, like you can make that argument. It's the very simple fact that Washington's 3-1 and Baltimore's 2-2. And in that Oakland game, good gracious, what year is it? In the Las Vegas game, obviously, like they weren't very good. And if you want to say like that's their Tampa game, fine. The Chiefs game was ugly to start the season, but they're 4-0, fine, okay. Is that loss really that much better on a subjective scale than some of the Commanders' wins? I don't know. But if you want to make that argument, you can. You can definitely make like, hey, the Commanders have played 3 games, the Ravens have played 3 games, but that are good, and then they've both had one that wasn't very good. But I would still I think the Ravens are a better football team. We'll find out, at least on next Sunday, like when they play each other. Mm-hmm. But if you want to make some kind of argument that they're top 5, sure. But teams like the Vikings have been ridiculous. Like Sam Darnold's actually Jayden's in the conversation for MVP through 4 games. It's early again, but like Sam Darnold is the MVP through 4 games, which is a wild ass statement. But at the end of the day, I think what's so fun about Washington, and if we stop with silly rankings, which is why we don't do them, by the way, we might do our tier rankings today. We might tomorrow, depending on how these calls go. But the reason that we do things the way we do is because trying to rank teams is hard. Is Team A really that much better than Team B? Or are they kind of the same? And that's why we do it in tiers. And I think for Washington, we can realistically look at them and be like, they have done better than we thought. They have a ton of room to grow. And yet, based off past history, I think we still cap a ceiling on them as are they, despite all that, are they a legitimate Super Bowl contender? No, they have a rookie quarterback. Is this rookie quarterback doing the greatest rookie or having the greatest rookie season I've ever seen through 4 games? Yeah, he is. Is he pushing what Andrew Luck did back in 2012? Yeah, he sure is. It's ridiculous. And his growth, all this kind of stuff. I can't look at the film and be like, this is why it won't work in the playoffs, because that doesn't exist on the film yet. But that's kind of the point, is you don't know what you don't know, and it's a long season, and there's still a lot of adjustments to be made. I was talking with someone earlier about Cliff, and it's Cliff has been excellent so far. Damn near flawless, I would say. But the one thing we don't know about Cliff, while he's answered a ton of questions, we don't know about his ability to get it right late in seasons, because we're still early in the season. And that's been a huge question for him. And that's not to say that I don't have faith that he can figure it out and that he won't be good later in the season. But it is to say that we won't know that until later in the season, because how could we? So it puts us all in a weird spot where I think you said it well when we were texting, Anthony, there's a cautious optimism. There's a million reasons to be optimistic. There's also the entirety of NFL history and also some of the history of some of the individuals we're talking about here to say that we should be cautious. So where are folks? And again, we don't have to make this pure optimism, pessimism. That's a somewhat boring scale. But you can be optimistic, you can be pessimistic, you can be joyous. Like you can say, I don't care what happens later. Like the fact that they've shown something so far gave me a sign of life. You can be like, I still haven't seen enough yet. Whatever your feeling is, like that's the point of Vibe Check Tuesday. So what is your vibe? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show, and we're taking your calls next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app. Three zero one 230 is the phone number. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show. You can also listen to us, of course, on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app. Check us out on YouTube at the Team 980, where we got a funny comment before we hit the phones for a Vibe Check Tuesday, Anthony. Locked On Law said, because we were talking about our tier rankings, TEIR rankings, and he said, we used to measure our team in tiers, as in TEARS. Get it?
Did you say TEIRS?
I might have.
Yeah.
Did I TIERS?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's because of the TEA. That's probably what threw you off.
Yeah. Anthony.
I just had to.
Hey, how many feet?
3.
By the way, did you ever send that to me so we can make a new hour open?
It's in my my folder. I'll send it to you right now.
Okay. Well, good time. I can definitely work on that right now, Anthony. I have nothing else going on. 301-230-0980. Look who's in tears now, all of us. Let's get to the calls, shall we? Let's start with Pierre. Pierre, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show. What's your vibe on this Vibe Check Tuesday?
Hey, good afternoon. So honestly, I'm at like a 30% optimism. I think I have a lot of trauma, like PTSD with some of history with,
Pierre, apparently we're not the only ones with letter problems today. PTSD. I know what you're saying. I'm just gonna. The fact that you did that on the heels of my tears. Honestly, Pierre, congrats for getting the show on a cellular level. Anyway, continue with the more important thing that you were saying.
Great. I'm just trying to stay consistent. You know what I'm saying? But no, it's hard. Like all my friends, I'm a diehard fan all my life. 38 years old. But it's kind of hard. I keep thinking like Dan Snyder sighting's gonna happen or something. Even though he's gone, it still feels like I can't really enjoy it. I know it's only 4 games in, and it's great. Everything looking great. Even my friends like, we're so explosive. I'm like, are we really explosive? Like I really can't really get into the vibe yet. I need to see it a little bit more. So I think we're headed on the right track, but I think some of the history is kind of making me reluctant to really jump in and be on the bandwagon. Like, yes, we're going to win the East. We're going to make it to the playoffs. I'm just not there yet. So I don't know what it's going to take for me to get there.
I get it, Pierre, and I think it's hard when you've never really seen it. And we have this on YouTube on the graphic. This is the first time Washington is 3-1 since 2011, a year that they missed the playoffs. So like, I totally get it. I guess my question would be, well, more so than like, what would it take? Because if either it's going to click at some point or it's not, or you're going to have that fear until it happens, and then good things will happen, then it will have happened, and you will have seen it. My question for you, Pierre, is: have you at least been able to enjoy it so far, even if there is a voice in the back of your head going like, "Well, we haven't done the big stuff yet"?
Yeah, some of it, but I caught myself watching the game against the Cardinals, and like at least 3 or 4 times, I'm like, "Yo, who is this team? Like, where?" We wanted this, right? We've been wanting this for years, and it's like, who is this? And so even my wife, she's in there like, why are you more excited? Like, I am, but it's like this dark cloud kind of stopping me from enjoying it all. I think if these next couple of games that we can finish 6-3 and 7-2, then I'll be like, okay, they're for real. And because the Browns and the Ravens they have great defenses, so let's see what we can really do, and I may be more comfortable with kind of jumping in and like, you know what? We got something brewing here. So for now, I'm just kind of a little, I'm easing into it, unlike some people.
I totally understand that, Pierre. Appreciate the call. Thanks for sharing that with us. Vibe Check Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Kenny in Charlotte. Kenny, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Always a pleasure, man. How y'all doing?
Doing good, Kenny. Doing good.
Hey, look, I will say that I am a Jim Zorn medium.
Okay, hold on. You're gonna have to explain this, Kenny. Jim Zorn medium. Okay.
Yes, because he used to always say that in his press conferences. He was like, one game at a time. We just got to stay medium. You know what I mean? We can't get too high, too low. And of course, they crashed and burned, so it's kind of tongue in cheek. I'm tripping a little bit because Jim Zorn, they definitely.
Anytime you bring up Jim Zorn, it's an automatic yes. You are tripping. Like you got the referee making the little put the foot behind the back penalty signal. We got 15 yards on Kenny and Charlotte for tripping. But I also get it. Like it's almost like a protection mechanism. You don't want to get too excited, and if you don't get too excited, you can't get too let down. Yeah.
Right, but like I told Anthony, in all seriousness, that I'm confidently in a one game at a time mode. You know what I mean? Meaning that not confident one game at a time is I don't know what's going to happen next, or I'm doubting us. But you know how Jayden Daniels, every press conference, he just says, you know what, that was one game. On to the next game, and he's laser focused and just ready to beat the next team in front of him. Not thinking about Baltimore, not thinking down the road. I think if we just stay medium, you know what I mean, one game at a time, and trust in the system, I really think we can win double digits this year. Also, Craig, real quick, haven't we been dogs in every game except against the Giants?
Yeah, I do believe that is correct. And I would expect them. Actually, I meant to look this up this morning when Logan and I were recording Take Command. So I'm going to look it up right now, Kenny. I'd be stunned if they're not favored this weekend. Like,
yeah, they got to be. I would imagine that we have to be. But my thing is, we look good now and we feel good now. But according to the statistics, we've been underdogs in just about every game.
Oh, yeah.
So I like the fact that we're beating the odds, and I just want to keep doing that.
For sure, Kenny. Thanks for the call. And I think it's funny how fans sometimes adopt the team like, oh, we got to take it one game at a time. And I'm like, there's part of me that's like, you ain't playing. Do whatever you want. You're a fan. Your emotions. But I also get it because like, if you take it one game at a time, then you can kind of check yourself of like, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl. Oh, we stink. We're the worst team ever when it's going the other way. So like, I totally get it. And it's probably the safest emotional place to be. But it is something that I always kind of chuckle with. And we talk about it a lot on these Vibe Check Tuesdays of like, I'm not going to tell you how to feel. That's not the point of the segment. I'm curious how you do feel. That is the point of the segment. But if you are like Kenny and you're like, I'm just trying to take it one game at a time, go in excited. If we lose, okay, it's not the end of the world. If we win, okay, we still know we have a long way to go. I think that probably is the way to enjoy it the most along the way, even though you might, you wind up appreciating it even more looking back because you didn't go crazy in the moment, but you're like, dang, that really was something. Because we just don't have the context of what this is yet. Is this a hot start? Is this a start of an unprecedented Super Bowl run? Or is this false hope that eventually will end not in total organizational failure? I think that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have proven they have a competence level that is far beyond anything that has been here for a long, long time, and that they're going to build it. But that maybe they yielded some early results that are ahead of schedule, and that this is just a hot ride as opposed to something that's sustainable over the course of this season. And it's it's a nice start to something that ultimately will crash and burn this year in favor of. If we're going to use the crash and burn, a Phoenix Rising in later years. By the way, also, Washington is favored this weekend. They are favored by 3 over Cleveland. Of course, the Browns are just 1-3. Their offense is dreadful. The total in this game, 44.5. So what's that, like a 24-21 kind of win is what Vegas is basically telling you there. Score plus total. So that's kind of that's honestly what I'm probably going to wind up picking is around that anyway. And I didn't look at those numbers from Vegas until right now. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Phone calls are stacking up, but we do have a couple of lines open if you want to get in on a Vibe Check Tuesday. Again, the telephone number is 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Mitch Tischler coming up at 5 o'clock. Mark Schlereth coming up at 6. The Take Command Tape Tuesday, Jayden Daniels film breakdown at 5:30. And more of your calls next. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where you can leave a comment, and we can try to get some of those on a Vibe Check Tuesday, but mostly we are hitting the phones at 301-230-0980. All right, let's go to Jamal. Jamal, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, fellas?
What's up, Jamal?
Man, I got to tell you, man, it's been humble the past month or so since this season has started. Has been hard since the games have started, man. It's been very hard, man. And I feel your previous callers because we've been through so much heartache here that you don't want to end up with egg on your face. But at the end of the day, Craig, I'm a huge believer in the eye test. Like, I'm not one of these people that like to act like I'm not saying exactly what I am saying. And prior to the game last week, I didn't feel like we were going to win double digits, even after the Cincinnati win. However, our defense showed up last game. And if that is going to happen, I'm not expecting them to hold everyone to 14 points, but if they play similar to that, like if we can just jump up to like 20th, 22nd even, and just not dead last, now the optimism is going to happen. This offense, in my opinion, I think is going to, obviously I expect them to have some type of, controversy, because he's a rookie. He'll probably have a game where he has a high turnover game. I expect it, but I do think he'll bounce back from it. And I think that Cliff Kingsbury will continue to scheme open our receivers immaculately the way he has. However, I don't know if you all heard, Devontae Adams just requested a trade, man, and I don't know if y'all feel like we should jump in on that, but I feel like we should. And if we do that, man, I know that's a lot of ifs, but I'm just saying, it just happened, so I figure I'd mention it while I'm talking to you guys. If they can manage to do that, that would change drastically everyone's expectation. But as of right now, current roster, from what I saw from that defense this week, Craig, if they can do that consistently, I think that should change everyone's expectation, because that's been the biggest worry about the team. And if the defense shows up, I think we're going to have a great season. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it, Jamal. Great call. I think that Jamal's got a great point on the defensive front, because, the offense is not going to stay where it is right now. The offense is not going to be 80% completion percentage, running through for 150 yards every other game. Like, that's just an unsustainable way. But what's crazy about what they've done and how efficient they've been is that if they can produce at 85% of this, they're still a top 10 offense. Like, that's the thing. I haven't looked up these numbers yet, so we're going to do this in real time, which is always fun. Anthony, don't you just love when I look up stuff on the radio that perhaps if I had 14 ounces of foresight, perhaps I could have looked up earlier? I do so much prep for the show, watching so much stuff, listening to so much stuff, and then I need basic numbers, and I have to go peeling for them during the show.
Sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles, though, Craig.
Sometimes,
you can be prepared, and guess what? You might need that extra little nugget,
Yeah, you might, and sometimes then you got to look it up, but your research skills are good. So here we are. The Commanders are currently 6th in total offense. They are also 3rd in scoring offense. We're going to go by scoring offense. You want to know why, Anthony? Because they're averaging 30.3 points per game, which if we treat as 30 is pretty easy to take 10% off of and subtract. That's 3 points.
Yes.
So if they were to be 90% as efficient, they would be 27 points per game, which means they would drop exactly one spot. Them and the Vikings would switch places. But even if we go, I'll do the more complicated math. Why? Because I have a cell phone, and a cell phone has a calculator on it. And it's fun to do math on the radio when you don't have to do the actual math. Okay, the Commanders are currently 6th in yardage. So they're 382 yards per game. If they can just do 85% of that, so times 0.85, that is 324 yards per game. That would put them, I said they're 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. They'd be literally dead even in the middle of the league.
Sheesh.
If they were simply doing 85% of what they did on offense. And they would still be top 10 scoring offense easily if they did 85% of their scoring. So they have some room to regress while still being really good, which brings it to the defense. And like, yeah, right now, yards per game, yikes, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the bottom. Scoring defense, my guess is they're actually better in scoring defense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th in scoring defense. So if they can get it into, I mean, they're already at 22? If they can get to 18, 17, which they don't have to give up 14 a game for that. They can give up, 20 a game for that. You average 25 and give up an average of 20, you're winning. Like that's how the game works. Score more than you give up. Sweet. That's good math right there, Anthony.
Great math.
So, when people say like, hey, this is not sustainable, that's actually okay. Because if they can merely be 85% of what they've been and improve 10% on defense, like, we're cooking. And it's not unreasonable to say this team should have expectations of making the playoffs if that's what they can be. That's not a controversial statement. The question is, can they actually do it? And when they hit adversity, because this is the thing that they haven't had yet. They had good vibes training camp. DQ is incredible at setting an atmosphere and having guys enjoying to come to work. And, there's a couple times during training camp where like, this is great. Everyone's hunky-dory, but it is August. What happens when you start running into people and injuries stack up or, guys make mistakes and it costs you a game and they have to handle real conflict, real adversity. And we don't know how this team's going to respond to adversity outside of what they did, bouncing back really nicely from week 1. Okay, that's a good test. Jayden Daniels was crazy good after his interception in the game. So that's a good sign. But let's see. And I would say defensively, like they've continued to grow. So the signs that we have, I think this is the best way I can say it right now, Ant, is the signs that we have are good. We just need to get some more signs, and they're going to have to continue to stress test this thing to see if they can maintain this over the long run. So there's that.
I mean, I would agree. But I think that's why, some of the calls that we've even had, trying to stay humble, show some humility just because we've been here before. Like, we've had good starts to the season, and we haven't really been able to sustain that. So, again, this is just the beginning. And, hopefully, we can just build on this momentum. But
yeah.
Right now, it looks good.
It does. It does.
Defensively, it's coming along, and we see the strides that they're making.
And that's the thing is, like, you're going to face a lot more offenses like Arizona than you are Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And, like, the performances defensively, I'm telling you right now, were not that different. And I know that feels crazy because they gave up 14 in one game and 33 to the other. But Joe Burrow will kill you in places that Kyler Murray will let you get away with it. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is real good. He's not close to Jamar Chase right now at this point in their careers. And like when you watch, you see the difference in a top 3 quarterback or a top 5 quarterback and a top 3 wide receiver versus what Kyler and what Marvin are. And I kind of felt that watching it. And then Logan, like that was his big takeaway from watching the tape back for the defense. And I was like, oh, that's real important, huh? And it is something that's worth pointing out, but also like, man, if you think Arizona's offense can get off track, wait till you meet the Browns. They haven't been on track all year. Obviously Baltimore, they're pretty freaking good. You have problems stopping the run. Here comes Derrick Henry. We're going to find out real big, but then they got Carolina. Carolina's a hell of a lot closer to Arizona than they are. And like Dalton's playing well, but like Kyler was playing well. Dalton and that crew, compared to Arizona versus Cincinnati, they're a lot closer to Arizona on that scale. And then who's the last team they play this month on this home stretch? Oh my God. Why can I not think right now?
Do we have a divisional game?
No, they're at New York after that. Where did Washington go? Commanders.
That's what I thought it was.
It's another team that they definitely will be favored against. Oh, the Bears. So like rookie quarterback, we'll see. They could be cooking by then, but and then they got at New York again, and then they got Pittsburgh. Then they're at Philly. Like outside of like how many of the offenses remaining on their schedule scare the daylights out of you the way that Cincinnati's does? Here's the rest of their schedule. Cleveland,
No.
Baltimore,
Yes.
yeah. Carolina,
No.
Chicago,
No.
Giants,
No.
even with a kicker.
Hell no.
Steelers.
Yes.
The Steelers scare you like Cincinnati? No, they don't.
I mean, not like Cincinnati. Okay, not like Cincinnati. Oh,
Right.
we're just talking. Oh, okay.
Are they close? If I put a midpoint between Arizona and Cincinnati, are they closer to Arizona or Cincinnati? Arizona.
The Steelers? Yeah, Arizona.
The Eagles.
Is this a healthy Eagles team?
That's the question, right? If AJ
they got some
and
time.
Devontae and all them dudes are back, then
Yes. I'll say yes.
that one can scare you. Dallas?
No.
I think they're
They
real
don't run
close
the
to
ball. They don't run the ball. So
yeah, but they're real close to that midpoint. I would say. I mean, because here's the thing: Dak will kill you in the way Joe kills you. Not as good, but he's real close.
Yeah.
And CD is
CD.
yeah. Tennessee? No.
No.
New Orleans?
No.
Agreed. They're much more the Arizona. As good as they look the first 2 weeks, they're much more Arizona. Philly again. Atlanta, we'll see what they are because this game is in late December.
Kirk is very detail oriented too.
He is. And then Dallas to close out the year. Like, you could have a team like Tampa that goes nuts on you.
Uh-oh.
Like, I'm not saying that their defense is all set for the rest of the year outside of those 3 games that we highlighted or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But, like, I think that people think they played 3 bad defensive games and 1 good one. And they did not play well against Tampa at all. They played it well enough, obviously, to win, but, like, barely against New York. Cincinnati, they played better, but not as well as they did against Arizona, but the gap wasn't as big as it looked because the offenses they faced were very, very different. Yeah. And so if they can continue to just play, forget 10% better, 2% better every single week, and it's a relatively linear growth with the teams that they're going to play, they could be just fine, which is exciting. They still got to go do it. It's a lot of work. They still got to figure out some stuff on the back end. But the last part that I think is important is, Dan, remember last week that when like Cliff and DQ said some stuff, we're like, whoa, didn't think they'd say that part out loud. They know that their defense is only so good. So they're playing complementary football. And I think that they deserve a lot of credit for that with how they're designing the offensive game plan. And Cliff deserves a lot for not being like, you're messing up my offense, bro. He's like, no, what do we need to do to win? And we're going to work together to do it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, more of your calls on a Vibe Check Tuesday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. One thing we didn't touch on in the last segment, we'll try to get to a couple more calls here, but I think it's Jamal caller. Jamal Adam Schefter. Actual Adam Schefter, it just reported, as did Ian Rappaport, Mike Garafolo, that Davante Adams has requested a trade from the Raiders, which I think everyone saw coming. But Schefter adding the details that apparently they want a second-round pick plus additional compensation. And I think that is something that the Washington Commanders should be monitoring. Obviously, let's see how the next couple of weeks go, because integrating a player in the middle of the season is really hard. I also would definitely want to know more about Adams, the person. I know a lot of people came out of the wide receiver show, Anthony, not liking Davante. I came out of that show liking Davante. I think he's a pro. I think the way he works is great. And I think in an atmosphere like they have here, like that would be big time. And I think they have the right personalities here to, I won't say manage someone like Davante, but like he would get in and fit in, and like Terry's not going to be like, oh my God, you brought in Davante Adams. Like that's not how Terry rolls. Terry's going to be like, sick. You brought in Davante Adams. Jayden Daniels going to be like, sick. Davante, can you meet me at the facility at 5:30 a.m. so we can get you up to speed on the offense? Like we got work to do, bro. Let's go. And so there is they don't have a Davante Adams on this team. Terry's amazing. But Davante's different. Davante is a legitimate blue chipper. And if you think that you can compete this year, if you think that defense can take the next leap, I'm not anti-trading for Davante Adams, because you have a couple of years here where Jayden, your quarterback, is on a rookie contract. You're probably using your draft pick next year for another, whether it's defensive end, offensive tackle, something that is typically expensive. It looks like Brandon Coleman could be your solution at left tackle, so that's another position you don't got to pay big money to. And so if you want to spend a little extra cash up front to support your rookie quarterback, I don't think that's the end of the world. The other thing that I think is worth considering is, remember that Jahan Dotson trade, Anthony?
Yep.
Do you remember the pick that the Commanders got back in return?
A third, I think it was.
Do you know whose third-round pick that is?
I don't.
It's not the Eagles pick.
The Raiders?
No. It's the Dolphins pick.
Ooh.
How are the Dolphins doing?
Not good.
I'm pretty sure. So I saw that floating around this morning. I should probably double check that before saying it on the radio, but I'm pretty sure that's the Dolphins pick. And so if you're going to all of a sudden have the fifth pick or the second pick or whatever, we'll see what happens with their quarterback situation of the second round or of the third round. That's not that far off from being a late second rounder. That makes me a little more interested in giving up a second for Davante Adams. So if you could, let me ask it a different way. If you want to include that pick, Anthony, would you trade a second round pick and Jahan Dotson for Davante Adams?
Without a doubt.
Right. And so if they take even that extra third that they now have, or can they take their third? Would Vegas be willing to take their third, which is going to be later than that third, and a second round pick for Davante Adams? If I don't have to give him new money, because I'm pretty sure he just signed, he got his money. Let's see what the contract is.
He got his money when he went to Vegas.
He's got, I think he signed an extension of some kind, because he has 2 years remaining. You could get out after this year if you really wanted to. He's got huge cap hits the next 2 years, 44 and 44.
Oh, my God.
But you could get out after this year. But you could also probably restructure, and you could spread some of that out. It's a deal that's already been restructured on some level, but you could restructure it again. You could make those cap hits less and add some void years to the back end, and try to time that out with when you're going to have to pay Jayden. So you could bring those cap numbers down. Point is, I don't know that you're giving Davante a ton of new money, unless he's willing to rip up this contract and do something different. But if you don't have to commit 4 years, 5 years of money, if I can only commit 2, that's a swing I might be willing to take. Now, do they have to? No. Would I do it unless I felt 100% certain? Something I, as a radio host, frankly can't feel compared to what Adam Peters, professional general manager, can do. He has way more intel. I think he also probably has a better feel for like, okay, what's next year's draft class look like? How valuable are those second round picks? Is it going to take a second plus? Like, can I make it a fourth or third 2 years from now? Or is it going to have to be multiple picks in this coming draft? Because I think you also got to remember, like, this is a team that wants to build through the draft, and those assets are extra valuable because that's where they get their guys. They get the guys that fit, that commander tag, and they were getting those guys in the third, fourth round. And so I don't want to give up opportunities for that. But Davante Adams is sick. Like, Davante Adams is one of the best in the league. And, I think Cliff would have a field day with him. The opportunities he would create for Terry.
Man.
Like, yeah, I'm willing to sniff around on Davante Adams. I think you'd be crazy not to. But I also understand if they just ultimately go, yeah, we're not in a rush. This is going better than we thought. That's great. But we feel good about what we have. And that's the other part of it, just from a psychology standpoint, right, Ant? Is like, if you like what's rolling and you think you're building, don't mess with it. Why would you mess with something that is working? The answer is because it raises the ceiling, but it also, it could disrupt the role that you're on.
With Davante, are we a championship contender? I don't necessarily think the acquisition of him moves the needle for the Commanders. The offense is already having success. Yes.
But it makes them so much harder to adjust against. Because
it does.
What happens when teams start bracketing Terry and the best teams in the league have the corner, or the best teams in the league have the corners to just lock it down on the outside? And now it's like you're going man coverage and you're having an extra player in the box, and like they can deal with the outside stuff. Davante changes that equation, right? If your number one corner is now on Terry and your number two is on Noah Brown, like that's probably how I would play this team. It's like I'd play a bunch of single high and force them to try to beat me through the air, Jayden from the pocket, and I'd play some man on the outside and be like, can you beat me? Terry's sick against man-to-man. So, like, I'm not saying it's not a risky proposition, and I'm not saying it's a perfect plan, but if Davante's now getting your number one corner, he can beat anybody in the league, and Terry's beating anybody's number two sideways. Yeah. Like, that does change the equation of what you might want to do. Like, now I'm playing too high stuff all the time, and it's like if Brian Robinson rushes for 175 yards and they beat us, then so be it. But, like, I'm not giving up deep balls to those guys all day long.
Yeah. I'm more so just thinking or just looking at what we've done the past couple of weeks. Terry, there were the first 2 weeks, like, he didn't really do anything. The volume wasn't there, the targets, and we had other players stepping up. Even this past week, we had OZ step up. We had Noah. We had Luke. So, like, the offense is moving with these pieces outside of Terry. Zach Ertz has been, instrumental in the effectiveness of the offense. So I'm just saying, I think just adding him still doesn't necessarily move. It doesn't make us a contender. It does make us a little bit scarier because you got to pick your poison.
Yeah,
but
100%. If you're telling me that I can get Davante Adams for that price, or I can get, Myles Garrett, obviously, like, Myles Garrett's the literal best defensive player. That's like Justin Jefferson. I'm like, who else? Who's the Davante Adams of defensive ends? Whoever that is. I'm taking the Davante Adams defensive ends. I'd also take the Davante Adams of corners for this team over I would take Davante Adams, the wide receiver, Davante Adams. But I'm interested in Davante Adams.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's their number one priority. They were obviously super patient on Ayuk, but, like, Brandon Ayuk is not Davante Adams. Yeah. Davante Adams is one of the 5 best receivers in football, and I do think that, there's also a professionalism to the way he does the job, like, literally, like, the route run and the intricacy, all that kind of stuff, that exposing Jayden to that and exposing Terry to that, and like, Terry's never played in his career with a wide receiver better than him. The second he got here, he was the best receiver in that room, and he has been every single year, and it hasn't even been remotely close. Like, rookie Jahan Dotson might be the second best guy he's ever played with. So what happens if Davante is like, hey, I got some tricks? So, like,
could get scary, man.
Yeah.
It's like, spooky too. It's October.
I get the appeal. Number one priority? No. Am I looking to give up a second rounder just for funsies? No. Devontae Adams ain't for funsies. Devontae Adams is not Brandon Ayuk, with all due respect to Brandon Ayuk. So this is a different conversation. Although I do think that what I don't want to do is get into a bidding war, and there's probably, I don't know, like a New York Jets type of team that is willing to get into a bidding war. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Appreciate everyone calling in on Vibe Check Tuesday. Sorry we didn't get to as many calls with the news here, but we will get to you guys, obviously, as the week continues to go, and we continue to take more. When we get back, though, we'll talk about this possibility with Mitch Tischler. It's Tischler Tuesday, and then it is Take Command Tape Tuesday. We review how Jayden Daniels played versus the Cardinals here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up at 5:30 today, the Take Command Tape Tuesday tape breakdown. I think I said one too many words there. The point is, you'll hear Logan Paulson go inside the tape on Jayden Daniels. 6 o'clock, Mark Schlereth. Right now, 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, it's Tischler time.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Our pleasure, of course, to welcome in the co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with JP Finley, Mitch Tischler. Mitchell, happy Tuesday. Anthony, you forgot the air horns. How dare you?
I'm doing well. I'm not that mad at Anthony for 1 minute. Not the end of the world.
Okay, we can do that. We'll allow, if Jayden Daniels can miss one throw, then Anthony can miss one set of air horns. I guess that's perfectly allowable. Mitchell, we're going to go straight to the heart of the sports talk radio world right now. Davante Adams has apparently requested a trade from the Las Vegas Raiders. The Commanders certainly could use an upgrade to the receiving core. Apparently, it'll cost a second-round pick plus, is what the Raiders are telling teams. If you are Adam Peters, are you calling Tom Telesco out in Las Vegas and saying, do you want to party? Do you want to dance?
I got to be honest, I stand kind of where I was over the summer when all the talk with Brandon Ayuk was going on. I'm not ready to trade him. I'm not ready to trade for another receiver, and certainly not a guy that's making as much money as Davante Adams is. We're walking into a situation where next year Terry McLaurin is going to need a new contract. If you have another receiver on the roster making a ton of money, you're setting the bar for what Terry has to make, and ultimately are you going to be in a position where you're going to be able to pay, two of your two premier wide receivers. And, oh, by the way, the offense is working kind of okay right now without having a second premier wide receiver. The mojo's going. Things are moving in the right direction. I don't know why you're going to mess up the apple cart right now.
I hear you on most of that, and I mostly agree with you. My only contention is, and why I have to at least be like, maybe, is Davante Adams is not Brandon Ayuk. And that is an important distinction, I think, when you talk about Terry McLaurin. And because I actually fundamentally disagree with the idea that whatever Davante is making is what Terry has to, because Terry is a tier below Davante. And that is clear, unlike Ayuk and Terry, who I think are much more similar players. Like, I think because of who Davante is and because he has been a bona fide top 5 blue chip guy, I think it is a different conversation. And he automatically becomes your one. Now, yes, the offense is working right now, but like if you want to talk about sustainability and making sure it keeps working, like Davante Adams is certainly not going to hurt. But I just think, Mitch, that because Davante is Davante, and he's like one of 5 guys I would say this about. It's like him, Justin Jefferson, Chase, a Tyreek Hill falls into that category where you go, they are a tier above even Terry McLaurin, as great as he is. I think it is a bit of a different conversation.
Yes. I mean, listen, Davante Adams was a great receiver, certainly when he was catching balls from, a first-round Hall of Fame quarterback. The numbers out there in Las Vegas haven't been particularly good. He left Green Bay because he wanted to go play with his friend out in Las Vegas. That didn't work out particularly well, and now he wants to trade, and you're going to have to give up a second-round plus to go get him. Are we sure that he's interested in being in Washington long term? Is he going to be happy here? Is he going to be a malcontent? I think that the core of what Dan Quinn is trying to bring in here has to do with, types of players that he wants and guys who are out there giving it their all. I'm not saying that Davante isn't that guy, but let's be honest. I mean, the guy is 32 now, 31, and, the numbers that he's put up, granted, you can play the chicken or the egg game here, but it's not like his numbers in Las Vegas, have been great last year. He had 1,100 yards this year. Things are starting to go downhill. I don't know. They certainly, I think, long term need to figure out what they want to do at receiver. But if you're bringing in Davante and that cap number, you're basically guaranteeing that you're going to have to pay Terry a pretty big number to keep him around.
Mitch Tischler, Beltway Football Podcast, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, that's the new news, if you will. The fun part about having you on, Mitch, is we always talk about the offensive line and how the Commanders played in the trenches, and that's going to be a fun conversation this week. When you watch this game back, or you're watching it live, taking it in as you did out there in Arizona, was this about as good as Washington played up front, especially on the offensive line? We can talk about the defense in a second. Clearly their best game of the season. But offensive line-wise, is this the best Washington has played since, I don't know, Trent Williams was here?
Yeah, probably. I mean, quite frankly, I thought last week against the Bengals was better than this week against the Cardinals. I thought last week a lot of Jayden's success came from the fact that the O-line was able to give him all day and night to stand around and find someone to throw to. This week, the O-line was good again. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think, I tried as we start getting close to the season, during training camp, folks were concerned about the O-line. And I was saying, it's more of a sum of the parts and how your offensive coordinator uses them and all these different things. And I think we're seeing that with Cliff in this offense. But specifically to their play, last week they were extremely good against the Bengals. And then this week against the Cardinals, they certainly were good. But this week against the Cardinals was Jayden Daniels just being an elite quarterback and putting his stamp on being, one of the fastest risers in the NFL.
When you look at Brandon Coleman, do you like this mix that they're throwing right now, where he and Cornelius Lucas this week, it's 20 snaps for Coleman, 19 for Lucas, or are you seeing enough that you think he's ready to just be the starter and Lucas is going to be a full-time backup?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to see Brandon Coleman out there full-time. I do think at the moment, just like the rest of this offense, everything is working so well that I don't want to make any major changes, because I do think there's a little bit to, kind of okey-doking the defense every other possession, because Brandon Coleman and Cornelius Lucas are two kind of different tackles. Brandon beats you with his speed and his strength, and Cornelius is more about his size and just kind of massive frame. And so it is tough for defensive linemen to kind of adjust based on, who's lined up across for them. You see the best pass rushers in the league like to use kind of the first and second quarters to set up kind of their big sack moves. They'll work upfield a lot, and then as you get later in the game, the counter to working upfield is kind of cutting underneath and getting in there. And if the Commanders are going to be rotating tackles like this, you're not able to set up those guys quite as much as you would, because you're not getting as many reps against each person. And I think it makes it, a little bit difficult. So things are going well right now. I don't want to really change a whole lot, but I think when you look big picture, I think it's fairly obvious that Brandon Coleman is the better of the two players and has the higher ceiling as we start moving further into this year.
Yeah, and clean up on Isle Hoffman. Stat keeping, Lucas total 37 snaps, Coleman 34. I was looking at the pass block numbers. But I do think it's interesting that, you can say this about some of the running back rotation, their receivers. Mitchell, it doesn't feel like Cliff is changing. I'll reword it this way. I feel like Cliff is doing a good job of not being predictable based off personnel. And whether that's packages in terms of 2 tight ends versus 1 versus 3, which tackle is in the game, which running back is in the game. This is an offense to me that feels like it can do anything at any time from anywhere on the field. And that is extraordinarily dangerous. If you look at this offense and you try to poke holes in it right now, just to try to predict if you're a defense trying to be the one that stops them, what do you think you have to do against an offense that feels like it can do anything, anytime, anywhere?
There's only been, I'm sure that there's a defensive coordinator out there who has seen something that's more predictable, but to me there hasn't been a whole lot of, keys where you could point out and say, hey, this means that this is going to happen. The one thing that I've seen is that when they go to the pistol and line up with both running backs kind of on either side of Jayden, that generally has been an inside run for this team. But that's such a minute, small piece of the offense that I don't know if that's even enough of a key for somebody to try and pick up on the play calling. And I think that's what's been impressive about what they've been doing with Cliff is that, obviously we saw it with Jeremy McNichols versus Austin Eckler. I'm not saying that McNichols is the same player that Eckler is, but it explains why they wanted to keep Jeremy McNichols over a guy, like Chris Rodriguez or some of the other running backs that were in that were in camp, and they clearly valued a guy who has the ability to be to stay in and block, but also be able to carry the ball on occasion and get out into the flats and make some big plays in the pass game. It's kind of a player-proof offense at the moment. I think you and I can both agree that the numbers that this team has been putting up the last 3 weeks are staggering, and you can't expect that it's going to stay that way, the rest of the year. And if it is, this offense is going to end up putting up historic numbers across the board, comparable to the best of the Tom Brady offenses or, greatest show on turf or some of these other, offenses over the years in the NFL that, teams have been able to point to. And as things are working, I think you just keep with the flow and keep letting the good times roll. And as teams start picking up on different tendencies, then maybe you start making some adjustments. But like you said, they've done a very good job of being multiple and doing multiple things at different looks.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing, too, where I think Cliff has done a great job of mitigating some of the issues that come with some of the things that he does. Put less generically, if you run out of shotgun, for instance, 90% of the time, you run opposite of where the back is. So if your back is on the right, you run to the left because that's how that goes. It's just an easier handoff than trying to run like a counter action. One, they have run some counter off of that. And two, they're using the two-back stuff enough that you can't run 90% both ways. And so you can't really cheat as a defense. And so there's just all these little things that Cliff does that I think are really smart that mitigate some of the problems that teams have when they do some of the things that he's trying to do, whether it's using the quarterback's legs, whether it's running out of shotgun, whatever. Like, he's saying, oh, that's a problem? Well, here's how I fix it. And it's like, why isn't everyone doing this all the time?
I'll tell you, one of the plays I'm looking forward to seeing, it's not a novel play in the NFL, but what I've seen in the first 4 weeks that I like so much is when they run a wide receiver tunnel screen or a little wide receiver out to the right, they also run it out to the left, and they kind of let Jayden diagnose which one he likes better and kind of goes with it. Whether it's this week, next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, at some point, they're setting up for that slot receiver who is the main blocker in the tunnel screen to flip his screen and just go and just run a go route. And there were a couple times last week against the Cardinals where their safeties were clearly keying on the wide receiver screen game and starting to attack a little bit early. And I think it's because the Commanders haven't quite shown any of the kind of secondary plays that you work off of the wide receiver screen. I think coming up soon we're going to see one variant of it, and it's going to be a Luke McCaffrey in the slot or a Lamine Zaccheaus, and they're going to be setting up like they're going to block for that wide receiver screen. Take a nine route and just go with it. And that thing could have been wide open in Arizona a couple times.
Yeah, that's a great call. They did that once with Ertz, I think in week 2. He drew a penalty on it. They got him up the seam. But also, like, if they're doing it both sides and teams are like, well, fine, we're not going to give you either. That's a tough ask because QB draw. Now all of a sudden you got a wide open middle of the field and Jayden Daniels running through holes. Like, that's not a good solution for a defense. So I think Cliff has done a great job of leveraging all the skill sets around. Meanwhile, they're trying to figure out how to do that on defense, and it starts with just playing better and harder up front. Did it feel like John Allen was back, Mitch, or is there still another level that you think this interior defensive line has to get to, even if it was unquestionably better on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, John Allen got a sack. The defense as a whole was a huge improvement. John Allen got a sack. Duran had a couple of pressures. The Cardinals still ran for 100-plus yards up, and most of that was right up the gut of that defense. And, the Cardinals took over the ball. The score was 27-14 with 3 minutes, I think, left in the third quarter. And that's a point where teams generally feel, okay, I need to throw the ball and catch up quick. And they were able to go down the field with consecutive runs right up the middle, right through the heart of that Commander's defense. And to me, that's just continues to be a big problem. I mean, sure, it's better than it's been, but to me, the improvements in that Washington defense last week were on the second and third levels with your linebackers and in the defensive backfield. The fact that up the middle they're still getting gashed is a problem. And granted, we're talking about it being a problem after a 42-14 win, so those guys aren't hurting too bad about it. But at the end of the day, you are going to start playing some better football teams, some teams that are more complete. Not necessarily this week against the Browns, but as you start moving forward, there's going to be some more competition. And if teams are still able to gash these guys up the middle, to me, that's the problem. And, I don't know what the solution is for it, but certainly getting Dorrance Armstrong free on the edge to get to the quarterback was super important. I thought this group as a whole did a really nice job of rushing the quarterback. All the complaints that we've had over the years with guys kind of doing their own thing and letting the quarterbacks escape either outside the edge or stepping under and getting up the field. They didn't allow Kyler to do that. That first drive was kind of ugly, but as they started moving forward, that thing improved immensely. And so for that, you got to tip your cap and give them a ton of credit. And, you can't fix everything right at once, but certainly they have to figure out something in the run game because they've been giving up a ton of yards on the ground.
Yeah, I just did the quick math thanks to PFF's numbers, and they track where runs go. 13 carries for 96 yards up the middle. So either side of the center, that's about 7.8 per carry. So, yeah, definitely room to improve there. Last but not least, Mitch, we returned to Northwest Field this weekend, which I'm excited about because apparently we're buddies in the press box now. We sit up there and it's like, hey, Mitch, and we can have conversations during the game, which is nice. I have to scream past Michael Phillips, and we can't win them all, but that's fine. But on top of getting to watch the game together in the press box on Sunday, I think this could be the best home crowd this team has had in a long time. Arizona, the opener last year, was actually pretty good. Arizona is a team that's not going to travel a ton here, and it was the first game of the Josh Harris era, et cetera. But football motivated, I think this could be the first, or the best home crowd in Landover in a long, long time. What do you expect? And if they can actually perform well and win, how does that set up the rest of the month for them, where they go to Baltimore, but then they come back for two more very winnable home games against Carolina and Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is going to be the best home crowd they've had in a long time, maybe 2016 or so. But this sets up for a couple massive games for the Commanders. I mean, you're going into Northwest Stadium against the Browns team that typically has a great fan base and travels well, but is down and, frustrated with what their team is doing. They're 1-3. Obviously, we all know about the quarterback situation and what's happening there, and injuries up front, and with the running game. I mean, the Commanders haven't really haven't had an opportunity to put their foot down on a game at Northwest Stadium in quite a while, and to kind of continue showing the NFL who you are is so important because going from Cincinnati to Phoenix, there easily could have been a letdown, and that's part of what made last weekend's performance so incredible was that the team didn't let down, but they kept kind of pushing this thing forward, and the defense played better, and they continued, commanding the offense unbelievably. You do that with the Browns, and you roll into the Ravens game again. That could feel like a playoff-y type, Super Bowl type atmosphere in 2 weeks in Baltimore with two teams that are all of a sudden looking at having pretty high expectations as you start looking on. Then you have Darrell Green's jersey retirement game against the Panthers. I think that crowd is going to be awesome because fans are going to be fired up about football. Plus you have, the Darrell Green thing. And then obviously the Bears, you have, number 1 versus number 2 pick. And I think Commanders fans are going to be happy to go out there and kind of remind or show Caleb Williams how much they love Jayden Daniels. This could be a really, really fun month for Commanders fans here over the next, whatever it may be, 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. But it starts this weekend because I think this, for all the boxes that this team and this organization has checked, even the Giants win, it's a win, but that was an ugly win. 21-18 over a team with no kicker. And that team, by the way, the Giants, who are not very good. So can they put on a real legit performance at home? I think that's the challenge. They certainly have the opportunity given the opponent. And it would be a good win if they can keep rolling offensively because that defense is good, and even if their offense stinks. But it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Mitchell, see you Sunday, sir. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you back on the radio next week.
I'll see you Sunday. I'm looking forward to it. The one thing you said about this game this weekend is the most important. Browns are the best defense they're going to play. They're going to have played this year.
Yep.
So if they can keep this offensive thing moving against them, that'll tell us a lot.
No doubt about it. Thanks, buddy. I'll talk to you this weekend.
Thank you.
All right, that's Mitch Tischler, everybody, with us. Make sure you check out the Beltway Football Podcast with him and JP. You can catch it in your favorite podcast app, and they also do some stuff with Monumental. So check out the Monumental Sports app, including their post-game live stream, which I think is a different time than our post-game live stream. But don't forget that you can also catch me and Logan take command style Sunday after the game, home games. We do it together at the field. For road games this year, we're having some fun with some of our other hosts. Sheehan was the guest. If you wanted to go back and check that out from Sunday, it's in the Take Command feed. Speaking of Take Command, next, it's Take Command Tape Tuesday. Jayden Daniels, how did he play? We look at it 5:30 every Tuesday through the lens of the All-22 and the eyes of Logan Paulson. That is next on the Hoffman Show.
22nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Jayden Daniels.
Jayden Daniels holds the keys to the Commanders' future.
Daniels is going to walk it in for the touchdown.
Take Command holds the keys to knowing how he played.
In the big moment when you needed to make plays, he just consistently made plays.
It's time for a Take Command Tape Tuesday.
Jayden Daniels just lays it out there perfectly. What a throw.
On the Hoffman Show.
On the offensive side, let's start off talking about the quarterback who, again, just, hey, where's this ball supposed to go? Okay, cool. I'm going to get it there. That is the Jayden Daniels way, to the tune of the highest completion percentage through 4 games to start a season in NFL history. 2 of the top 4, by the way, coordinated by Cliff Kingsbury. And Jayden, I'll start with this, Logan, when it comes to Jayden Daniels. I do not think he was as masterfully efficient on Sunday as he was on Monday night. But that's only because what he did on Monday night against the Bengals was one of the great, as we talked about, one of the great quarterback games from efficiency, maximizing literally every play that I think we've ever seen. This game actually felt more sustainable over the long term in terms of the things that he did. And considering how good that he was on Sunday and the fact that it felt sustainable when you watch it back, that is actually, in a way, more terrifying than something that felt like a spectacular outlier on Monday night, even if that spectacular outlier contained a lot of signs of really good stuff that he could do again. If this is who Jayden Daniels can be, winning from the pocket like he did on Sunday and throwing over the middle more, some of these other throws that I know you're about to talk about, like that is actually, in a way, more terrifying for the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the efficiency, and again, it wasn't quite what it was versus Cincinnati, and again, but there's so many good things to talk about with this offense, like so many good things, and I think like we could let's start with the quarterback, I guess. I think the one thing that really sticks out to me is, like, is he the most efficient of all time in this game? No. Is he really, really, really good? Yes. And I think when you look at the thing that blows me away is I was like, how many bad down and distances were they in this game? And I have 2 on my sheet. They had a 3rd and 15 where they had to punt, right? Yep. And they had a 3rd and 13 later in the game. Which they can
get a completion to Noah Brown and pick up.
Tremendous. And then they had a 2nd and 15 where they complete a ball to Luke McCaffrey. Those are 3 in the whole game where they were in a bad down and distance. You just don't. I just watched Cleveland. How many? They're in bad down distance like every drive feels like.
I am going to ask my boss for hazard pay when I have to watch this Cleveland offense. They are terrible. They just live in bad down and distances.
And so one of the things I look at is I say, like, there's a couple throws that maybe he I don't even want to say that because I feel like he's even making good decisions here. But
that's the thing too, right? We talk about efficiency real quick, Logan. Like, he may not have gotten the most out of a play, but he still gets a lot. And if like a 10 was available, but you still get an 8, 8's really freaking good.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that sticks out to me about it is like just the composure and the decision makings of like when to scramble, like when to put yourselves in the best situation to be successful. Like the first scramble of the game, right? It's a 2nd and 4. He scrambles. It's not a big scramble, but he gets you to 2nd and 3rd and 2. Like, we're not taking sacks. We're not throwing the football away. We're not in the. You're always kind of moving forward. Like the worst down and distance before that 3rd and 15 was 3rd and 4. Like, that's the worst one of the first half, which is, if you're an offensive coordinator, you're like, I love this. This is fantastic. And to kind of follow that point up, like, Cliff did a great job of just being like, hey man, like, we're going to call I don't want to say perfect game plan because it's so symbiotic. And I think when you're allocating credit, it's really hard to do because there are times where Jayden is elevating the play like we just talked about. Instead of taking a sack, we get a 2-yard scramble. We're in a good down and distance, right? But there are also times where Cliff is calling quick game at the perfect time. The setup's perfect. We got that choice route, or that I guess it's a choice to OZ and the first 3rd and 4, where it's like you get it's man coverage, he short motions. Everybody in the NFL runs it, but Noah Brown does such a great job of picking, like, kind of creating that natural pick for Ozzy's guy. He's wide open, easy first down. Like, the execution is so high. The time you're calling plays is so significant. And then it's so funny after watching a lot of Cleveland's offense and a lot of watching of Deshaun Watson, the way that Jayden throws the football, the quickness of the release, the quickness of his feet, it cannot be overstated how efficient that makes this offense. Like there are so many times, like there was a spot concept. So a corner, a sit, and a bubble basically, or flat. The Arizona Cardinals have it matched. Like the linebackers pushing through to the spot. And the quickness that Jayden's able to get back into his drop, the linebacker's sprinting to the spot. And he just delivered, like it's just like this flick of the wrist, ball's out, and the linebacker could not have played it any better, but Jayden is just physically better than you. And I remember talking to Kyle Shanahan about Jimmy Garoppolo a couple years ago, like it's 2017. And one of the things he said about Jimmy that makes him hard to cover is the quickness of the release, because he can hit those like little, 5-yard sits. He can hit a slant. And you see that with Jayden. Like there were so many times in this game where like that is covered if there's another quarterback back there. Like watching Deshaun Watson, it's like he can't throw a little 5-yard out because his windup's too long. And so people run and rally under it. That's not a thing with Jayden. And it just makes the floor of the offense so much better. And then in conjunction with that, like Cliff calling the right plays, good play design. Like there was another play where, they run that kind of half boot out to the offensive right. Do you remember that? And they throw the comeback to OZ. Talk about just making it easy for the quarterback, right? We're going to have the tight end over there, John Bates, going to block the edge. I'm going to run outside of you. If I don't like the comeback and I don't like the cross, I can scramble for 12 yards because there's nobody over here. But I like the comeback, easy release. And I think that's the cool thing about this offense is like Cliff knows when to make the easy things as easy as possible so that when it's time for Jayden to do something crazy, like on that 3rd and 13, like you already talked about, where there's a little bit of pressure, he's in the pocket, he vacates, and then has to kind of deliver an off-platform ball to Noah Brown. Like he can do that because we haven't been leveraged throughout the game. Like there's probably, I'd say, thinking back on it, probably 7, maybe 8, like leveraged throws, but everything else is like, it's as it should be. It's easy and straightforward. And I think that's something that makes me so excited about the way Cliff's calling these games. And again, like because Cliff's calling a good game, that doesn't mean that it detracts from what Jayden's doing, because Jayden's doing a fantastic job of keeping you on schedule, elevating versus bad looks. Like the throw to Noah Brown is a great example of that. Like that play is covered, it's dead.
Yes.
You buy a little time, you deliver the football. Like that's an elevation he's bringing to the offense. And the fact that it's happening in big moments and little moments, and they're elevating each other, I think makes this group so incredibly special. You know what I mean? It's just special to watch an offense operate with this level of consistency. It's like I was talking to Bram about this the other day. I feel like it's hard to explain. I feel like I am watching something kind of like football magic a little bit, because offenses just don't do this. They just don't they don't do this. And so the fact that you're getting good play calling, good execution, and we'll talk about this more in a second, but people, when it's not blocked up perfectly or the route's not exactly right, elevating within the context of the play that way, you're getting plays from Zach Ertz, you're getting plays from Jeremy McNichols. Like it's just a special thing to watch over the last 2 weeks.
No, you're right. Offenses don't do this. And my only thing that I've told people is like, hey, don't count on this being it. It's the first time they've scored 38 back-to-back weeks since 1991. It's the first time.
Craig,
yes.
Like I told someone that the other day, I'm like, there's probably going to be a little bit of aggression. They're thinking, oh, Logan, you're being such a hater. I'm like, I'm just doing like math.
Yeah.
Like it just like this is unprecedented.
They can still score 28 a game and be one of the top 5 offenses in football, and that would be a regression from what they've done the last 4 weeks. It's the first time they've scored 30 in back-to-back games since Kirk was here in 2017. It is what they're doing right now is wholly unsustainable based off mere NFL math, but they could regress by 10, 15% and still be one of the best 5 offenses in football. Like it is ridiculous though, the cohesion that they have and the playmaking. And a couple of things I wanted to touch on that you just talked about.
Yeah. Sorry, I went on a little bit of a ramble.
No, it was a ramble of quality. It was a ramble of quality. I think that there's a couple times you watch the quick game stuff and the ball gets out so just efficiently that I don't know what the coverage is, but it feels like it doesn't really matter. That like they eventually get back in their drop and I'm like, I don't think that should have been open. You're like, I don't know that that's the quote unquote right read, but like Jayden takes a snap, it's wide open, he throws it, and the ball's there so fast, it literally doesn't matter what the coverage is because the dropper can't get to that space fast enough because he is so quick with his release. And it actually works in conjunction. That thought was kind of in my head as I'm rewatching the 3rd and 13 for like the 4th time. because if you see what happens with the play, you rewind it back to the top, and then you're like, okay, let me watch Noah Brown here. And you're like, oh, he could have actually thrown that earlier. Is he late on this? Let me go to the end zone angle. Let me see what's happening. And you realize that Noah Brown gets the ball, quote unquote, late because Jayden's not looking at him. He's looking the complete other side of the field. He's reading a multiple, person concept, and Arizona covers it up. And then Jayden's like, okay, well, I don't have that. Now I got a little bit of pressure. Let me get out. He takes like 1.5 steps. He sees Brown, and the time from him seeing Noah Brown open to the ball being out is nothing. It is ridiculous how fast. I mean, you talk about processing speed. The time from thought to action for him is as good as I know this sounds ridiculous. He's a rookie who just played his 4th game. It is as good as anybody in the NFL because I don't know how you could possibly have it happen faster. And so even on a play like that where he's getting through a full progression, takes on pressure, when he ultimately makes the decision, it happened so quickly that you get a conversion on 3rd and 15 and Noah Brown gets a 16-yard gain and voila, the offense keeps on moving.
Yeah, and I think, again, like, you mentioned the quick game, you mentioned the processing ability, like it's all there. And I think like the other one that was amazing to me was the completion of Luke McCaffrey. Like they're running like a little stick kind of spot route to the offensive left. He looks at it and he gets back to Luke and delivers just an absolute laser beam. It's man coverage, so it's a little bit easier to make those types of throws. Awesome. And so not only is the quick release there and kind of the simple stuff being simple there, but you see that elite throw to Luke McCaffrey. You see the elite throw to Terry on that 10-yard out. Like you're not going to see a better throw than that. Like it's cover 3, the cover 3 players dropping out. There's a hook player buzzing right under that. And so for him to layer that throw over that defender and get it up and down before Terry's out of bounds on the sideline is one of my favorite throws he's had. And so like you were saying, he hasn't been overly efficient, but there was a lot of things in this game where I was like, that's the best throw of that type I've seen him make.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
it was a different kind of performance than Monday night, but it wasn't like in no way is that meant to be a negative. Like it was incredible in its own unique way.
And in some ways it's more encouraging because I feel like the stuff he did in this game is stuff that's going to serve him better longer. Right? Yeah. Like we talk about the big throw to Terry in the Cincinnati game, which is, Bram said this, and I think it's very astute. It's maybe the best throw in the last 30 years of the organization. Like it's a special play, that touchdown on 3rd and 7 in the moment. But those are not, and you need those plays in an offense in the NFL. You need explosive plays. Those are not like down to down things that you see that sustain offenses.
Yes.
The throw to Luke, the throw to Noah, the throw to Terry, the touchdown to Terry, like we're going to look to the offense, to the offensive right. We're going to pull the safety over there. I'm going to come back, settle my feet. I was maybe a tick late, but again, the release.
But he's also waiting for making sure that Kaiser White doesn't undercut it. Like I think he takes on. I was going to ask you about this play. I think he takes the slightest of peaks to Jeremy McNichols, which is just enough to move Kaiser White a half step out of the throwing lane. And to me, I trust Jayden that he did that on purpose and he knew he had time because the backside was clean. That he's late, but he knew he could be late.
And late is relative here. I mean, it's like it's like tenths of a second. You're like pausing the frame, so, but like throwing over the middle of the field like that is, again, something we want to see from him. Like, I love that. I love that he's pushing himself that way. And again, those are the throws that you were always kind of questioning when he came out of LSU that we haven't really seen a ton of, at the NFL level so far. And so to see them kind of stack, probably 5 of them in this game, I think was really, really great to see, in addition to the stuff that he already does really well, which is the quick game, kind of take what's easy, that type of stuff. But that to me is special. That's what, again, like there's the completion percentage, the efficiency is good, but when you start seeing those more challenging throws and the other stuff has remained consistent, you're like, man. And I'm not a guy who gets overly excited, but those were the things that I came out of this game being very excited about, that and the defense playing hard. But I think that's what I would kind of settle on there is like, was it as efficient? No. Were there some things left on the field? Yes. But did you see more variety? More, like I use the analogy like clubs in the bag. Like we got the wedge, we got the driver, we got the quick, like it's all there. And I think that's something that I'm like, man, versus like Baltimore versus Cleveland, Like you need those clubs because those are really good defenses.
Well, and that's actually a good way to wrap this up here, I think, is like Cincinnati, he was smashing 300-yard drives.
Yeah.
Just time after time, you're like, wow, that's spectacular. Here, he's like bending a 7-iron around a tree and hitting it within 3 feet of the hole.
Yeah.
And it's like, dang, that is, if he can do that on a regular basis, the 300-yard drive is nice, but your short game is what'll kill you if you can't follow up that 300-yard drive. And boy, did he show that he could use every other club in the bag.
Well, just as a point of comparison, like think about, I don't know how much Indianapolis football you've watched, but think about Anthony Richardson. You know what I mean? Like Anthony Richardson is
longest hitter on tour. Wedge game is not great.
Not great, right? And he's the youngest player in the NFL. So, like, we expect him to grow and develop. This is not an indictment of him. But there's a really good juxtaposition of someone who can do the high-level, amazing highlight play whenever you want it because he's got the arm talent, maybe one of the better arm, like maybe the best arm in the NFL. I don't know. Josh Allen probably has something to say about that.
Yeah.
But it's the things that sustain an offense that he can't do well yet, right? And so, like, that he's got to grow into that. But to see Jayden do that, that's the thing that if for fans, like that's the thing that NFL quarterbacking is, right? Like when you look at the best guys to do it, it's the 10-yard out, the throw over the middle, like those are the things that sustain an offense. And they, Jayden what did we say, 5 times in this game? Maybe I'm forgetting one, 6 or 7. The really good ones, Joe Burrow, not even Josh Allen, maybe Patrick Mahomes you could put in this bucket, but definitely like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers. They do it 15 to 20 times a game. And that's how the offense works and is effective. And so it's cool to see he's got that. And I'm really excited to see Cliff kind of give him more, and see how much he can go here.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're talking to Mark Schlereth. In 9 minutes, the three-time Super Bowl champion will join us to break down the Commanders-Cardinals game. And really, more so than that, and empty his notebook. Stink does this on his podcast, The Stinkin' Truth, which is an Odyssey production. Every single week, whatever game he calls, he kind of empties out the notebook about that game because they have all the production meetings, and obviously a lot of stuff doesn't make the telecast. So they reached out to us, and we're like, hey, Mark would like to empty his notebook on your show. And I was like, sick. Come on. And so we did. Or we're going to, I should say. Coming up in 9 minutes. So Mark Schlereth with us at 6 p.m. Right now, though, here on a Vibe Check Tuesday, my vibe is excited, Anthony. Did I? Oh, I got it right here. Got a game tonight.
Oh, okay.
Got a game tonight. We got 2 games tonight, actually, in the WNBA playoffs. Liberty Aces game 2. Kind of need this one for my prediction to be correct because I picked Aces in 4. So I thought they'd split in New York, and then Vegas would figure it out at home and get those 2 before it goes back to New York for game 5. Connecticut, they won on the road in game 1. So that was unexpected. Minnesota's been incredible, but Connecticut able to get the road win in game 1. But the Vegas-New York game, Anthony, tonight, when we did our preview on the WNBA show on Hoffman W Sports side of things, I realized very quickly that I had forgotten to mention someone who needed to be mentioned. And I talked about how, to the extent that anyone can match Asia Wilson's production, Stewie is that player. Breanna Stewart is phenomenal, and she can also put up 27 and 10 rebounds, and she was great. A player like Kelsey Plum, who has been great so far in the playoffs, outside of game 1 of the first series where she was sick. She was great in game 2, and she was good again in game 1 against New York as she was chirping with Spike Lee. She can go toe-to-toe with Sabrina Ionescu. And I said the player that it seems like you get down the list and it's like, oh, dang, the other team doesn't have a player like that is Jackie Young, who was solid in game 1 but not dominant. But I didn't give Jonquel Jones near enough credit. And she was great. And her ability to legitimately cause Asia problems down low because she's so tall and she can get shots off in the post. To pull Asia away from the rim as a rim protector because she can knock down threes, and she did that. To be his size to give Asia problems, in her post-up game. More so, like Asia was still great and she still got hers. But Jonquel Jones to me is like, it kind of comes down to, okay, second, third order best players in a series that's so star-studded, who's going to be the next best player to step up? And in game 1, I think it was Jonquel. And if that can be Jackie or Chelsea Gray in game 2, then Vegas can be okay. But they need their stars to play well. Each side does. And then they need someone else to be the X factor. And it is a tough challenge for them because Jonquel is so uniquely talented. This is a former, I don't know if she won an MVP, but MVP finalist. I'd have to go back and check. But that caliber of player, I'm pretty sure she did win MVP when she was in Connecticut. That still is near the top of her game. And all of a sudden, if that can be who she is, I think New York, and by the way, that's part of the reason they kind of took that next step this season is they figured out how to integrate her in a way they never did in their first year together last year. Mm-hmm. New York can absolutely win this series and could sweep this series, frankly, if she's that good.
Yeah, the stars got to come to play. I'm not going to lie, the game, I didn't watch the entire game because, again,
it was
football
in the middle of
was
an NFL Sunday.
But looking at what Sabrina was able to do, like her role on the team has more been a facilitator. But if she's out there, being effective from scoring and she's dropping 30 and you already know what you're getting from Stewie, and then to also bring in Jonquel, it's going to be tough to beat that team. And I mean, Asia, she's going to get off. KP, she showed up, but again, all the stars have to come play. And Jackie and Chelsea, they have to also.
I mean, Chelsea's been incredible.
I've never seen her have a bad game.
10, 15 games. But post-Olympic break, she was rusty. She was coming off an Achilles injury, right? She knocks off the rust. She's been great. It's why Vegas closed the season 9-1, and then she goes 2 of 7. She only has 1 assist for the point god. 1 assist in a playoff game, 4 points. So she's got to be way better. And the other thing too is, like, I'm not just saying this because she's my friend and I'm holding up her jersey right now. But like Alicia's really important to this series. Alicia Clark, who until her teammate Tiffany Hayes, who also did not give them very much in game one, won it, was the reigning sixth player of the year. So back-to-back years, Vegas has sixth player of the year, and it's two different players. But Alicia knows Stewie's game, and defends her better than maybe anyone in the league because they played together in Seattle. Like she knows her inside and out. And the only stretches of that game where Vegas was really competitive were when Alicia was on Stewie and like slowing her down. Stewie had 34 points. I want to say it had to be like 5 of the 7 misses probably came against Alicia. God. And Alicia in 25 minutes is +5 in a game they lost by 10. So part of the problem is she got in foul trouble. And so can she stay on the floor and defend without fouling, especially since I don't think most of those came against Stewie in one-on-one situations and slow her down. And then, Asia pick it up a little bit, and only 6 rebounds for Asia. Like that's got to get better. They have to force more misses. That will probably help. And then obviously, get Plum going. Jackie winds up with 17 points, but she's not super efficient in that. And then get Chelsea going. So there's a lot to fix for Vegas tonight, but it should be a good one. Game 2, 7:30. And then we are out of time, so we won't talk about the other series, but it is a fun one to watch too. I'm excited to get to watch a little bit more of this one. Just a bloodbath of a fourth quarter. Connecticut won the fourth quarter 16-8 in the first game. So 73-70, Connecticut pulled the upset against Minnesota. Minnesota trying to get back on track behind Nafisa Collier tonight. All right, that is tonight on ESPN2. If you want to watch, check that out. We'll have more coverage on the Hoffman W Sports podcast / YouTube channel. Hopefully tomorrow, if not, certainly Friday. We have a fresh edition of the WNBA show. But coming up next here on the radio, Mark Schlereth. Yes, Mark Schlereth, NFL on Fox, former Hog, of course, 3-time Super Bowl champion. He joins us to talk Commanders Cardinals next. Hoffman Show, final hour here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That Odyssey app where you can find the Stinkin' Truth podcast twice a week with our pal Mark Schlereth, who, of course, was on the call for Fox this past Sunday, the three-time Super Bowl champ, joining us now. Mark, how we doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Things are good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to have you, and always fun, especially after you have a Commanders game, because I know something you do on the podcast we're going to get you to do here on the radio show as well, which is kind of empty the notebook. You guys have so much that you get from the production meetings. Obviously, you watch the tape, and you have so much going into those meetings. Not all of that is going to make the broadcast. So what are some of the things that you kind of had on your plate going into this game that maybe you're still thinking about coming out, but didn't quite come out in the telecast?
Yeah, some of the things you just hit on the surface, and there's so much more, that is boiling underneath. So one of the big things for me was just that Cliff Kingsbury journey, and kind of what's different now than was when he took over in Arizona and spent a couple of years coaching in Arizona. And so, one, just sitting down and talking with him, like he's a different dude. Like there's a humility and a responsibility that he's taken for what didn't go right in Arizona. And so, I'm asking him, like, what are the things that you learned and what are the things you did differently this go around? And I found it really interesting. Like, one, he said, I knew I wanted to work with a young quarterback, but I also knew that when I worked with Kyler Murray the first time, I should have brought in a veteran presence that had, some similarities, that had been through some of the things that Kyler was going to go through. And so right now on their roster, although he's on IR, they brought in Marcus Mariota. And Marcus, much like Jayden Daniels, was a second overall pick, right? Had some success early, but then kind of fell apart and, had his struggles. And Cliff was like, I know how valuable those experiences are going to be, both the good and the bad, and all those different things that a quarterback who's kind of been through it and had high expectations, some of the pitfalls and some of the things that I can hopefully keep my young quarterback out of, falling into. And so having that presence within that room, it was of vital importance to Cliff. And so he wanted to get that done. So he got that done. And then ultimately, that air raid system that he ran in college all those years. And remember, he was with Kyler Murray in college. He was with Baker Mayfield in college. He was with Patrick Mahomes in college. He's got a who's who of quarterbacks that he has worked with in the college game. Just worked with Caleb Williams a year ago before he was a first overall player taken. So he has got this plethora of different quarterbacks he's worked with. And he just talked about the principles of the air raid and spread offenses. And, your top personnel groupings in that offense are always four wides. And so you take that spread principle of offense and you bring it to the NFL. And there's a couple things that I was really excited to hear him talk about. One was always something that bothered me: in shotgun all the time. And there is value in shotgun, but there's also value in being under center and having a tailback dotted in the eye. There's the play action aspect of it that you get so much more run on. Like when you take a ball from under center, turn your back to the defense and go to hand it off, linebackers can't help it, like run up, they're right on you, they're just, And so like the action that you get off of that, how much more open guys are in the intermediate throws. Ultimately, basically not really truly understanding the NFL run game and having the wherewithal to bring in Anthony Lynn, Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, bringing in Anthony Lynn, who's been a head coach, with the Chargers. He was a teammate of mine with the Broncos. Really, really understands the run game, not only from an X's and O's standpoint, but a mentality standpoint. And to watch them put together and orchestrate a roster which has tight ends that can actually block people. That was not something he had before, right? And getting into 12 personnel and getting into 13 personnel. And some things that people
for listeners that might not know, 12, two tight ends,
Thank you.
3 tight ends for 13.
13, yes, thank you. And so people don't understand like the value of that, right?
Right.
And so one of the things, and I'll just give you a couple of reasons. One, like we got to block edges, right? And we got to be able to take we got to be able to take the punishment to defensive ends and things of that nature. So it helps in the running game that way to have guys that can block. But the other thing it does for you, and this is the big one, when you're in spread all the time, you get a bunch of exotic blitzes with skinny dudes who can run. And it makes protection harder. There's just so many more things they can do from space and things they can do from a blitz standpoint, that when you condense formations, and this is always a big kind of struggle or fight. Like quarterbacks will oftentimes like spread because they can look at the whole picture and say, oh, I think that guy's the most dangerous, or I think that guy's the most dangerous. But those guys run 4.3 40s, right? I don't. Like offensive linemen don't do that. And so there's value in condensing a formation and getting a lot of fat people on the field, because fat people don't run as fast as skinny people. And there's value in that and understanding that. The other thing that we talked about is in a spread offense, when you get out of rhythm throwing the ball, you know what's really hard to do? Get yourself back into rhythm throwing the ball. We're struggling throwing it. We're going 3 and out. We're not possessing the ball. We're not eating up any clock. And to throw myself back into a rhythm when my quarterback's out of rhythm, when my receiver's out of rhythm, everything is not working. Sometimes the best thing you can do is condense, get in those heavy personnel packages, the 2 backs, 2 tight ends, those type of things, and just cram it down somebody's throat. And so there's been this metamorphosis, if you will, this melding together of spread, air raid principles with real live NFL run principles and NFL game planning principles. And it's been this really cool amalgamation of those two things that have come together. And for Cliff to be able to step back from kind of what went on in Arizona and to critically look at yourself and go, man, this has got to change, this has got to change, this has got to change, and then implement those things and be secure enough in you as a coach to say, I'll bring on a guy that was a head coach and an offensive coordinator and a run game coordinator, and I'll have that guy help me and I'll argue with that guy, but we'll come to some type of an agreement and put it all together. I think there's value in that. There's humility in that. And I really, really appreciate that about Cliff. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I've really appreciated his pressers this year, which you only get so much in a press conference. You guys get so much more, and they're just different, more intimate conversations in these production meetings. So it's very cool to hear him kind of come off that way in that setting as well. I am curious because you talked a lot about how it was at the start of Arizona, right? I think by the end of his time in Arizona, he had figured some of that out. His run game by the end of Arizona, a lot of people were like, that's actually looks a lot better. And like James Conrad, I think his last year, like a 1,300-yard season. Right. So he clearly figured something out. So I'm curious, as you unwound that conversation with him, where Anthony comes in and Bobby Johnson and some of the other coaches on the staff to take the things he had figured out by the end of Arizona to the level that they're at now.
Right. I think most of it, what Cliff was talking about, was the mentality of it. And you have to understand, like, I think the best coaches, and I really believe this, the best coaches do a phenomenal job of understanding other people's problems. Like, empathy is a really important aspect of life in general. And a lot of times as coaching and coaching staffs, you know what your problems are. I know what my issues are for my guys, right? But you have to have an understanding of what everybody's issues are. And so there's truly some empathy that's developed in kind of understanding, like, hey man, if we don't do this well, this thing is going to suffer. And there's this chain reaction that goes through that. And so Anthony Lynn, having been on, those Bronco teams that I was on, that we rushed for, 1,700, 1,900, 2,000-yard rusher, all those things that we did year after year after year, Anthony was part of that. And so he knows the value of that. He knows the value of having receivers that aren't prima donnas that will actually get involved and block people. He understands the value of having a tight end that can line up at the Y in line right next to the tackle and actually block people. He knows the value of all those things, and he understands the mentality of how that grinds on a defense. The other thing he understands is that, hey, man, don't get so upset with a 2 or 3 yard gain if that 2 or 3 yard gain is having a purpose, and that purpose is wearing people out. And so I'll go back to that game against Cincinnati where they hung 38 points or whatever they did on
38.
Cincinnati. 38.
Yeah.
In that game, Brian Robinson had 33 yards rushing, but he had 16 carries. Do you know how many coaches would throw up their hands after 6 carries at 2 yards a carry and go, screw it, like there's nothing we can do?
Right.
And they'd end the game
most.
with 8 or 9 carries. And then what Anthony brings is, the value of that, the play action we got, the one-on-one matchups we got at the very end, they bring straight zero coverage on us, right? And Terry McLaurin beats the corner for the touchdown. Like the value of running the ball and continuing to be consistent with attempts. Dan Quinn brought up something in the broadcast that or brought up something in the meeting that we used a lot in the broadcast, was this term of 55. And it's an old West Coast thing. It was 50 back in my day, but it's 55 now. And it was 55 rushing attempts with completions. So if you can get to the number 55, like you're going to win games. You're going to possess the ball. You're going to control the clock. You're going to control the tempo and the flow of the game. You're going to keep your defense off the field. If we can hit 55 combined rushes with completions, like we're going to win. And we're going to win a lot of games. And over the last 3 weeks with their 3 wins, they were like, they were like at 52, 58, and I think they were close to 60 last week. And so you look at what they're doing, and they've got a formula for how they're going to win. The other thing that was really cool, just speaking of that formula and Dan Quinn, like Dan Quinn understands some of the issues that they have on the defensive side of the ball. They're trying to figure out their cornerback position. They've got some issues on that back end. They've got some issues on the edge right now with pass rushers and things of that nature. So they know they've got some weaknesses. Actually, Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne are not playing great football right now. They have not been as productive as we've grown to see them. They've given up big plays up the middle of the football field. They've given up a lot of traps, a lot of whams, a lot of things that they've got to clean their games up on, right? And so they haven't played their best football inside. And that's concerning. And Dan Quinn understands that. So he also went from the standpoint of going, hey, man, I know the defensive deficiencies we have. I know the big plays that we've given up. So that's why you're going to see me go for it on 4th down. That's why you're going to see me turn it over to the offense, knowing that, hey, man, we're going to have trouble stopping some teams. Therefore, if we can stay on the football field and we can trust our offense and we believe that we've got a great scheme, a great package, and a unbelievable young quarterback, like that's what we're going to do. And so you've seen Dan Quinn err on the side of being uber aggressive in those situations, partly because he has so much belief in his quarterback and his offensive system. But a lot of it's because, he doesn't have that same belief in the defense right now. So he's coaching the game like a lot of defensive coaches coach the game to protect their defense, and he's coaching the game based on what's it going to take us to win today, understanding that I have some defensive deficiencies that I'm going to have to overcome.
Mark Schlereth with us here on the Hoffman Show, of course, the host of the Stinkin' Truth podcast and analyst for the NFL on Fox. And he's got 3 Super Bowl rings, which doesn't feel like a thing I should say last, but it feels silly not to say it. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Mark, in terms of the conversations that you had with the staff is you had them week 2 after Jayden has an okay debut. Clearly, with the benefit of hindsight, his worst game of the season. He only threw for 200 yards and didn't turn the football over and
Right.
things that are generally pretty good for a rookie. But you have him after week 1, and then you have him after what he does against Cincinnati. How different were the conversations with Cliff and with Dan and anybody else you talked to about Jayden and where he is so quickly? And then how did those play into what you saw him do in the game?
Yeah, like the same kid, I got over to the hotel Saturday morning. I had a meeting with Cliff at 7:30 a.m. And so I got over there at, 7:15, whatever, I had a cup of coffee, and sit down in a meeting room with Cliff and, our crew. And we just started talking about it. And he's like, I'm sitting in my office, this makeshift office at 5:30 in the morning. And who pops his head in at 5:30 straight up? Is Jayden Daniels. Hey, what are you going over? Like, he's a junkie. He is a football junkie. And it's just reps, 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 preparation, 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 understanding like the kid's level of, of football consumption. Like, he can't get enough. And he's constantly repping it and working it, mental reps, physical reps, whatever he can get. Like, that kid is on it. Like, he is working it. And so, but the big thing to me was watching this dramatic, like, and he was really good in this first game, all things considered. There were 3 or 4, maybe 5 plays I found where he turned down automatic completions to take off and run. And so I had that conversation with him, like, dude, what are you thinking? Yeah, we can't do that. I just didn't trust it. I didn't read it out. I just got antsy. I took whatever it was. To watch him on film every week get exponentially better at those decisions, and then to hear Cliff talk about, how we're creating drills so his eyes don't drop, and so he continues to, even as he tackling a line of scrimmage because he's getting loose, like he's still trying to go through the progressions and get downfield and figure out who's on the scramble drill. And so they worked on all these drills to make sure they help keep solidifying those things. And you have watched him become the guy that only runs when he has to, not because he can. And he's done that in 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Which is when your default mechanism, and I'm not saying this because I think he's a quarterback first, but normally when your default mechanism is from the neck down, meaning I'm just going to rely on athleticism, it just doesn't change. That's who you are. That's always.
And it's not like he wasn't successful doing it, right? Like he scrambled for 80 plus yards and moved the chains and like was successful running. So it's not like he figured out that he couldn't do it in the league. He just changed anyway.
Yeah, but he just understood for longevity, and he took that shot against the Giants where I thought he broke all his ribs. He said he just got the air knocked out of him, he couldn't breathe. But I'm like, that was one of those shots where you think twice about how often do I want to run this ball, like, because these guys are dangerous on the other side of the field. But to watch him to make that adjustment mentally and get over that, like, that's been incredible. And then just watching the connection between he and Terry McLaurin, and I just thought that was phenomenal. Quick, while I'm on Terry McLaurin, let me just give you just a little, because you're going to love this. So I am talking to Jonathan Gannon, former coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, now the head coach of Arizona. And Jonathan and I are very friendly, like Dan and I are. We're good buddies, and we're just talking about McLaurin being an issue, a problem. And he's like, in all my years in Philly, he's like, we didn't hesitate. They had Darius Slay, they had, Bradbury, they had good corners, good cover corners. You go, never hesitated to lock up my corners one-on-one in man-to-man coverage. And it didn't matter who the guy was. Just everybody in the league. We just go, hey, you got this guy. You're wearing the hat. Tonight, you're wearing the hat. You got it. One guy we didn't do it with, Terry McLaurin. Terry just tore us up. And he goes, he's just like, I have so much respect for him. Not only his speed, his toughness, but his route running and how he sets people up. Like, he is a guy that you cannot give one-on-one coverage in, because he will eat you alive. And I thought it was really interesting, like the respect factor for Terry McLaurin, who obviously everybody says, oh yeah, really good receiver, right? But he's been doing it year in, year out with a plethora of different quarterbacks, a bunch of also-rans, and to have that level of respect based upon who the quarterbacks have been, I found very, very interesting about just the way they felt, because I've always thought that Terry McLaurin was vastly underrated, but I think I probably underrated how underrated he is.
Yeah, no, that's a great anecdote. And I was still on the beat Terry's rookie year. And I remember, like, in training camp that first year, like, man, this guy's this guy's really good. Like, I don't think he's going to be the special teams guy they drafted him to be. And
Right.
next thing you know, Gruden pulls him out of the preseason games, and then he goes out his first game against the Eagles and scores twice. And you're like, oh, no, that camp stuff was real. So that was, he always has had the Eagles numbers.
Yeah.
That is both surprising because it's like, but what about Justin Jefferson? But also unsurprising considering what Terry's done to the Eagles over the years.
Yeah, no question about it. So that was a revelation for me because, like I said, I always knew that he was really good, but I probably just didn't understand the level of respect some coordinators have for Terry McLaurin. And you hear it all the time. Anytime you face him, you got to shut down 17. Blah blah blah. You got to figure out a plan. But that was real. There's no question about it.
Mark Schlereth, you can catch the Stinkin' Truth podcast. The rest of his notebook gets emptied there. And, of course, they'll do a preview of this coming weekend on the Thursday show. You can also catch him on a brand new show with Fox with my pal Danny Parkins, amongst others on that cast and crew. And then, of course, NFL on Fox on Sundays. Mark, always a pleasure, sir. We'll do it again later this year.
My pleasure. Great to be with you, man. Take care.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show from Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And earlier today, Davante Adams informed the Raiders that he would like a trade. The Commanders are a team that's come up, as you would expect, is they could certainly improve the receiving core. They have the cap space. They have more cap space than anybody else in the league. I just was perusing Twitter in the break, and our pal Field Yates from ESPN, one of the analysts to throw that the Commanders out there. So let's talk about it at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Would you want Adam Peters to pick up the phone, call Tom Telesco, the GM of the Raiders, and make him an offer? Apparently, it's a second rounder plus is what the Raiders are looking for. So that's the question at 301-230-0980. Let's go to TD. TD, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, yeah, man. Thanks for taking my call. Nah, I'd love to see Davante Adams here, but I'm not willing to give up a second-round pick for him because, the offense is okay. I think they're going to be okay with the young cats that they have. I think they need to go out and they need to start building on that defense. So if you're going to give up a second round pick, I think it should be for somebody that's young, that you don't have to spend a lot of money on, that's worthy of a second round pick. Thanks for taking my call.
All right.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Davante Adams did. I remember Davante Adams stating that he didn't want to come to Washington. He said he'll go anywhere, but he didn't want to go to Washington. Y'all can fact check me on that. But I do recall him saying that, and I was a little angry with him about that. So that's my man. But he said he don't want to come to Washington. So y'all can fact check.
So we had gotten a couple people calling saying this. So we have done the fact checking and we have the audio. But thanks for the call, and I'll respond to more of TD's calls in a second. But here was Davante Adams on it wasn't like Hot Ones with Sean Evans, but it's one of their spin-off shows. So he's sitting there eating hot wings with Amon-Ra St. Brown in promotion of wide receiver over the summer. And this is what Davante Adams said about Washington.
And then you got the Washington football team. I mean, they obviously just miserable because the stadium is horrible. The city is not great at all. I'm probably going to get somebody at my front door after this, but that's just how I feel. We on Hot Ones right now, so it's just a raw and cut. Right. Yeah.
So that was Davante this summer. I get the stadium part of it. That stadium has been miserable every time he's been here. I can get, and I think the question was like, who's the worst fan base in the NFL or something like that, and or like, I don't know, the exact wording obviously is going to matter to set up the answer, but it was something about the fan base, and Davante's answer was that. I would say a couple things. One, I don't know what his beef is with DC as a city. Maybe I don't know where he stayed in the past. Maybe it's not very fun. I know some teams stay in like Alexandria, some teams stay in wherever. I don't know. Some teams maybe stay in downtown. I don't know what he's heard about DC, but I think that could be fixed with some basic information and facts because DC is awesome. Two, the person that can make that call to fix that is Jayden Daniels. Jayden and Davante know each other because Jayden was around the Raiders a little bit last year because obviously the relationship he has with Antonio Pierce going back to their days at Arizona State together when AP was one of the people that, along with Herm Edwards, recruited Jayden to ASU to begin with. I know Davante really wanted in the draft Jayden to go to Las Vegas, as did Vegas. There been various reports that they offered as many as 3 first-round picks. So there's all of that. I think if Jayden Daniels called Davante Adams and was like, hey, bro, I want you here, Davante Adams would be excited to be here. I honest to God, don't think there's that much more to it. I think the problems come in the money. The problems come with Davante probably wanting a new deal. He's due a ton of money the next 2 years, and none of it's guaranteed. So when I say he's due, like if you keep his current contract in place, and maybe you guarantee one of those years, right? Maybe you say, hey, you come here, we'll guarantee one of the years. Maybe we'll restructure and add a void year to spell some of the cap hits, but we're going to get 44. We'll pay you you're going to count $44 million against the cap next year. And then you have some other decisions you probably make. But ultimately, like, then your receiver position's taken care of. You have Luke coming up. You have Terry, and you probably re-sign him in the offseason, and you can make his cap hit in the first year pretty low if you want to. And then Devontae, and then you can build whatever you want. Maybe OZ comes back on a similar deal, whatever in the future. But ultimately, the money needs to get figured out for Devontae to be happy. I think whatever he said on Hot Ones, I'm not going to read too much into. But I did find the other part of TD's call kind of funny, Anthony, because you want to know how you trade for a young player who's good and worth a second-round pick, or how you acquire a young player who's good and worth a second-round pick?
By drafting them?
That's correct. You draft them in the second round.
Just making sure.
Yeah. Nobody's available that's young good. Because otherwise, if they were young and good, why is the team trading them? Players that get traded are older and expensive, and there's some element of risk involved. Or they have the power to say, hey, I want this, and raise a stink. They've got standing in the league to do that. There's no, who's a good, like, Will Anderson, if he was like, I want out in Houston, they would be like, sorry, dude, keep playing. And he's got no real choice because he hasn't gotten to that second contract yet where he doesn't have real money in the bank. Like, Will Anderson's making good money by, like, regular human standards, but all he's got to do is keep playing for 2 more years, and then he gets a massive extension, and he's going to make hundreds of millions of dollars. And then if he wants to throw his weight around a little bit, he's got a lot more weight to throw. But realistically, like, you're not getting someone young. I think I did get it was a tweet or a YouTube comment earlier, Ant, that we were saying if I could get the Devontae Adams of defensive ends, let's say, for a second rounder, I'd rather have that than Devontae Adams, just based off the positional needs of this team. Because to the caller TD's point, I'd rather spend on this defense than I would on this offense. One, it's easier to put in a defensive player in the middle of the season, and two, obviously that side of the ball is in more need right now. And someone said that Hassan Reddick is the Devontae Adams of defensive ends. I don't agree with that. I don't think Hassan Reddick is that good. I'm not saying he's not a good football player. He's a very good football player. He's not as good at defensive end as Devontae Adams is at receiver. But if I just tell you based off what the Commanders need, like, would you rather spend, and let's say they can even bargain it down to it's just a second round pick, or it's like a second and a fifth next year. There, now we've got the plus on. Second and a fifth for Devontae Adams or Hassan Reddick. You have both deals on the table. Are you doing Reddick, Adams, or neither?
And this is for a second and a fifth?
Second and a fifth.
I think I'm going with the Adams.
I think if I have to do one, I'm also going with Adams.
If I have to.
Because I don't want to pay Hassan Reddick when he clearly wants to get paid. Like, Devontae, I'm bringing his number down. I'm guaranteeing him something while I'm bringing his cap number down.
But I will ask you this question, though, Craig.
But real quick, I don't think Reddick is worth a second and a fifth. I think that's the problem. Like, I feel more confident that I can find Hassan Reddick in the second round next year than Hassan Reddick being worth that.
Yeah. So when we do trades, are you more so looking for so like, you know, when we did the draft, when we talked about best player available, drafting for need, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
When we do these trades, are we more so trading for best player or positional need kind of thing? If we're going to do the Hassan Reddick, Devontae Adams, you know,
well, that's
comparison.
the thing, right? Is like when the Commanders got on the clock in the second round, there were positions they needed more than defensive tackle. But Johnny Newton was a first-round player for them, first-round grade.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the only guy left on their board that was that. And that's what you're kind of looking at here. If you're looking at Hassan Reddick versus Devontae Adams specifically, if you tell me I can get like a fourth for Hassan Reddick or a second for Devontae Adams, now we're talking. Yeah. Now I'm like, all right, let's do the fourth and like see if we can figure out something 2-year deal for decent money for Hassan Reddick to make him happy enough to go get 10 sacks in the rest of the season. Like, I'm down for that. At least off the top of my head, I am. But like the idea that you have, like Devontae Adams and Hassan Reddick are different players. Devontae Adams in the draft room, war room scenario is Johnny Newton. It's like, how's this dude still on the board? Take him. But that's also the other part of this is like, you don't have to have those two deals on the table. You're going to have a Reddick deal, an Adams deal, but you also have the idea of neither. And like, don't move until you have to. Because what happens if the offense bonks this week? You go lose at Baltimore. Now you're 3-3. And yeah, you still got a really good chance to compete for the division, be around 500. Probably you can beat Carolina for sure. See what happens against Chicago. But like that becomes a different conversation about how you want to spend your assets for the rest of the year. So it's tough decision. Whether you want to like really go in and get involved, but I do think if you go out this weekend and maybe you look a little stagnant offensively, the defense takes another jump, and you're like, well, I know how we can not look stagnant offensively. We can have Devontae Adams. Well, that becomes appealing all of a sudden. I get the appeal. I'm kind of surprised that more people aren't into it. There's looking at the YouTube chat, looking at some tweets and all that kind of stuff. But I also 100% get the desire to stay patient, and I definitely think that staying patient is probably the prudent move in the long term. And if this is still floating around the trade deadline, and all of a sudden they're 6-2 or whatever, then that becomes a different conversation. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, we will wrap up the show with real things real people said into real microphones. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, wrapping up here. Also live on the free Odyssey app and on YouTube at the Team 980. What do we got tomorrow, Anthony? Tomorrow's a Wednesday. What do we do on Wednesdays these days?
Well, we didn't get to our tiers today, so we'll get to them. We'll get to them tomorrow.
And how do you spell tiers?
Tiers.
Yes.
Well, you just said tiers. You didn't say
Well, no,
specify.
that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay,
You don't
just
spell it
making sure.
T-I, you spell it or T-E, you spell it T-I.
Yes,
See, maybe
sir.
that's it. Maybe I know how to spell it in my head, but when it comes out of my mouth, it's wrong. That's
okay.
When listening to the whole show, you realize that. But if I would write it on paper, I'd get it correct.
Craig, I have one word for you.
Mm-hmm.
You ready?
Yeah.
Spell rigmarole.
Oh, first you confused me because you were like, I have one word for you. And then you started saying a lot of words, and I was like, what? And the word is rigmarole.
Yes.
Spell rigmarole. N-O.
You got it.
No, I don't want to spell rigmarole. You spell rigmarole.
R-I-G-M-A-R-O-L-E.
Wow, that's correct. I thought, I was like, there's no way that's correct. Rigmarole. But it said rigmarole.
Yeah.
A lengthy or complicated procedure.
Yep.
Also known as the Hoffman Show, 4 to 7 daily on the Team 980. Tomorrow, Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels talk. So we'll hear them. A little bit more analysis from Logan sprinkled into the show. Competition Wednesday. So there's a chance that Anthony and or I will be doing something silly.
Did you get any wrong?
I don't know. You want me to look?
I know I started off 0-1 because of Dallas. I'm never taking Dallas again, ever.
Let's see. That was... Oh, I don't remember the score. That one was definitely not...
I know I got the tiebreaker.
I think we're going to have I think there's a chance that I might have to spin the wheel.
Oh, no, because I lost again. I went 0-2. The Seahawks I had plus 3.5.
By the way, I love that you going into last night, I was under 500 and I've come out on 500. I've salvaged another week of picks.
Yeah, you have. I'm 11-5.
Which is good for you. I went 8-8, so my gap is not as big.
I mean, you have a 1-game lead though. I was hoping I should have just agreed with you, so it could have just been tied.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't remember the scores in some of these games. But things are definitely not promising.
Baltimore minus 2.5. That was a plus.
Anthony,
that's the only one I got right.
This is the segment we do tomorrow. So we're going to do the segment tomorrow.
So sad.
So sad. I am going to look after the show, though, because now I'm curious.
We're
going to make the audience wait until tomorrow. Or they can go back and listen to the podcast from last competition Wednesday and listen to the picks and then do the scores themselves if you're really that interested. That's tomorrow at 5:30. And then what? I already made the fantasy sub. We tied last week, and then we came up with the tiebreaker so that we never had to do that again. And then you still owe me lunch. But
yes,
we'll get that squared away.
Also, I leave tomorrow, so
yeah.
Well, after tomorrow. So.
Yeah. Lunch. You're coming back. You're just going to a wedding. Right. You're coming back. Lunch can wait if it has to. The point is, Anthony, that also hopefully Clinton Yates will join us tomorrow. That's tomorrow. Missed anything today? Podcast is there for you. Schlereth was great. Mitch Tischler was great. Good calls in the 4 o'clock hour, so worth the full listen if you want to check us out there. Of course, also on YouTube at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. Last but not least, never least, it's time for Real Things.
Real things.
We're not going to suck this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Anthony, what's in the magic folder of sound today?
So we have one thing left over from yesterday. Mm-hmm. Joe Flacco really showed his age in his post-game interview yesterday.
Yeah. He filled in for Anthony Richardson and then talked about his relationship with Anthony Richardson.
I do have to tell you, Anthony Richardson told us that you were cooler than he thought he was.
Listen, he told me his mom is 8 days older than I am. So there's no chance in the world that he thinks I'm cool, so.
All right, what about your kids, though? What do you think they think of this one?
This is the first game they've come to this year, and Dad's on the field, so I'll look up there for him and see if I can find them. I'm sure they'll have a bunch of critiques for me. That's about it.
We appreciate the time. Thank you.
That is hilarious. Joe Flacco is 8 days older than Anthony Richards' mom. Is that what it was?
Yes.
And that can't even be 8 days younger. 8 days older.
Oh, no, my bad. 8 days younger than AR's mom.
Oh, AR's mom is old. Okay, so at least his mom is older.
Yeah.
Also, Joe, he didn't say you were cool. And by the way, thanks to Aditi and the crew at CBS for the question. I believe that's who that was. I'm just going purely based off voice and my psychopathic knowledge of NFL broadcasters. But he didn't say that you were cool. He said that you were cooler than he thought. So I don't know where the bar is in cool and Joe Flacco, but it might have just not been very high.
Joe seemed cool, though. I seen him after the game, give him one of those.
Yeah.
You know?
You didn't ask Shane Steichen to put you in this time?
Nah.
All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow.